Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland. I'm Pat Solomon, Worship Associate at UUCC. If this is your first time here, let me tell you a little bit about our congregation and our faith. UUCC is one of approximately 1,000 congregations in the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations in the U.S. Unitarian Universalism has no shared creed, and our individual beliefs are diverse and inclusive. We affirm and promote 7 principles found to my left on the wall and in the hymnal. They are grounded in humanistic teachings and the world's religions. Our services seek to create connections with others and within, enrich our spiritual values, and represent our calling to live lives of equity and compassion. We are a welcoming congregation, and you are welcome here to be your whole selves. We have one announcement. It has been requested that any congregant with an electric car and has used our charging station, please reach out to David Cantor. David Cantor, are you here? Yes, you're back there right now. By email or phone for a quick chat. And our chalice lighter is Anya Lucen. And we now have it says insert, but it's actually for some things, for the things that are consistent, that will be read, used every service. They are now on this yellow cardstock, which is in the pew pocket. And please read with me the chalice lighting. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Hear the words of Reverend Deborah Smith. We are hungry. We are eating our daily bread and bowing our heads, and yet we are hungry. We are thanking the farmer and the farm worker, and yet we are hungry. We are speaking in spaces for food that is healthy, and still we are hungry. We are tiring of slogans that say, feed the children, and mean feed the children leftovers. We are hungry for something that feeds more than bodies. We are hungry. Lead us not into meanness, for we are the hungry who want the loaves and the fishes and the water and the wine of sweet justice for all. We are hungry. May we acknowledge that mutual hunger as we worship together today.
Please rise and join in our opening hymn. We gather together.
if you have somehow made it into a pew with bread. We want to offer you an opportunity now to take that bread, which I'm confident is individually portioned and wrapped, to the narthex where there are some baskets waiting for you. And since I don't see anyone leaping into action, we'll move on with a reading from Luke.
By Maria Rilke. So, you must not be frightened if a sadness rises up before you, larger than you have ever seen. If a restiveness, like light and cloud shadows, passes over your hands and over all you do. You must think that something is happening with you, that life has not forgotten you, that it holds you in its hand. It will not let you fail. Why do you want to shut out of your life any uneasiness, any miseries, or any depressions? For after all, you do not know what work these conditions are doing inside you. I beg you to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers which could not be given to you now, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing, live your way into the answer.
We are living in strange times. We have a bread ceremony for which we will not be sharing bread with one another in the church building today. We are going without. We've been going without some other things that have been meaningful to us, and we may as well just acknowledge that. Historically, in almost every religious tradition that human beings have invented, there is a place for going without, for spiritual fasting. It's not something that Unitarian Universalists are accustomed to doing. But a lot of religious traditions create space for intentionally going without. Typically, a fast is going without food or a particular kind of food. But a fast could be intentionally giving up anything in order to gain some spiritual benefit, some inward growth. Some people find that a spiritual fast is a helpful way to manage a difficult life transition, to overcome a test of faith or a challenge in their lives, an identity crisis, or to reconnect with nature or the divine. Sometimes we hear about people going to the wilderness and having a fast from their technology. People might fast in times of mourning, when they are seeking redemption or forgiveness, or when they want to experience a renewal of faith. Some people fast when they're seeking a sense of purpose or clarity about an important life decision, or when they are overcoming addiction or a crisis. And there are some people who fast as part of a holistic health and well-being plan in their lives. Although there are many reasons to fast, a spiritual fast has some common elements. It's always a physical thing. There's always a physical component to fasting. Even if you're fasting from binge watching garbage, there's a physical component to that. And spiritual fasting involves focusing on your spiritual self. You're leaving out something in order to focus on some inner work, or to focus on connection to your deepest, most noble self, or connection with the divine, however you name it. Fasting is also deeply personal. You have to tune into your own inner teacher in order to intentionally fast. And it's for your health, it's not for your harm. Fasting isn't about self-denial just for the sake of self-denial. If there's some sense of shame or a harmful sense of abusing yourself in order to get some benefit, that's probably not going to lead to a healthy spiritual place. A spiritual fast is for your own inner health. But what about when we are denied things unwillingly? What happens when we give up something in our lives that we haven't intentionally chosen to give up? Like sharing meals with one another as a community. It's not what we want, but it's what a lot of wise counsel says is the best way to keep our congregation healthy. Can that be a spiritual fast, even if it's not something that we have chosen for ourselves? Well, like a lot of circumstances, it depends. It depends on what we put in its place. It depends on what we do instead. If we're giving that piece of our community life up, what are we doing instead? What will we do intentionally to fill a space that would otherwise have been filled by sharing bread with one another this morning, or a potluck, or a breakfast? Maybe we can derive the same benefits from an unintentional fast if we are intentional about how we engage in that life. So what are some of those benefits? We're going to take some time this morning to think about all of the different ways that a fast might be of benefit for us, our spiritual selves. And we'll take some extended time of reflection after each of those. Not terribly long, but time enough to kind of digest if that might be useful to you. All of these things are probably not going to be useful to each person here, but some piece of this might spark something in you today. And the first piece that we're talking about is that a spiritual fast is physical. This is what distinguishes fasting from a practice of just spiritual contemplation or reflection or meditation. There's a physical component to it. The idea is to abstain from something in order to open space for doing some other reflection or some other spiritual work. Focusing, instead of having our needs met externally, focusing on internal needs that we might have. This physical act of denying ourselves something is first and foremost an act of trust. We're trusting ourselves that we're going to be fine without this thing going, with this need being unmet for a limited amount of time, we're going to be okay. We're trusting ourselves to be able to have the discipline to do this meaningful thing. We're trusting ourselves to still be able to find ways to connect, even if we aren't able to connect in familiar ways that we would prefer. We're trusting ourselves. We're also trusting our higher power or life or the universe or reality or however you frame that. We're trusting that our essential needs are still going to be met. Even if we give something up for a time, that our needs are still going to be tended to in a meaningful way. And we trust that when we move out of that time of fasting, out of that time of lack, that there will be people around us to continue meeting those needs, that life will provide. It's an act of trust to say, this is going to be okay. It's also an act of discipline. Spiritual fasting is how we help ourselves distinguish our wants from our needs. There are some things we might fast from and deny ourselves that fall in the category of wants, and we just pretend like they are needs in our day-to-day life. And so we get to have clarity about that and say, I guess I can do without this thing a little more than I thought. And maybe we can express a little more gratitude when even our most basic needs are met, when we have that deeper awareness of the difference between our wants and our needs. So I invite you to take a moment now and consider what it is for you, what it is here in this congregation or elsewhere in your life that you truly need. And can you delve into a deep sense of appreciation for those essential needs being met, even if they aren't as consistently or perfectly met as we might like? We'll have a time later in the service for sharing our joys and concerns as usual, but now I just invite you to reflect on that sense of what you truly need. And where can you stand to invest a little more trust in yourself or others or life to meet those essential needs? Where do you need to trust you? We'll take a moment for reflection. I'm aware that one of the things that Alan needed was to know how many reflections there would be before his piece, and I apologize that I didn't mention it. Spiritual fasting is not about denying yourself what you need. Instead, it's about managing your needs in order to orient yourself toward a more spiritual goal. Hunger, for most of us, is easily remedied. But your spiritual wellness might require a longer practice, a longer trajectory over time. So the goal of fasting, the goal of going without in a spiritual sense, is not suffering. The goal isn't for us to feel some kind of suffering because we deserve something, in our lives. That's not what it's about. There will be some discomfort. There will be some suffering that goes along with denying ourselves one thing in order to seek after something else. But that discomfort isn't the point of fasting in any spiritual tradition that I read about. If we're willing to be intentional about how we engage in our current circumstances, for instance, even an unintended time of fasting can open up opportunities to see new ways of engaging in our spiritual identities. Maybe we focus less on the discomfort or the disappointment that we feel as we abstain from certain ways of connecting with one another. And as we focus less on that, we can focus more on what we can do instead. What do we put in its place? If we're fasting from technology and going out in nature, what we would put in its place is a deeper connection with the world around us, a deeper sense of being present and mindful in the moment. So if we're going without being connected with one another in certain ways, what do we put in its place? What do we do instead? So I invite you now to consider that possibility for just a moment. To reflect instead of on the things that we are feeling a lack, that we are feeling we have lost somehow, what do we do instead to find connection? Where do you want to put energy toward other possibilities? We'll take another moment for reflection.
Do you ever feel just empty? Just dried out? Like you gave all that you had to give and there's just nothing really left? And have you ever felt that like the world is just asking a little bit too much from you? Maybe it's your parents, your children, maybe it's a partner, your teachers, your bosses, your customers, your clients, friends, not so good friends. Have you ever gotten to that point where you are sure you have nothing left, but you look up and there's still several hours left in the day, or just a few meetings to go, and just a few last things to do, and then it turns out there's a little bit more left, a little bit more of you to pour out in the world. So you do. But if you weren't empty before, you're surely empty now. Emptiness. To be empty. It's a strange feeling to be empty in our world. I mean, we live in an age that is overfilled and oversaturated. I mean, we rarely don't have enough. And so often we're surrounded by a hollow abundance. It's a strange thing to live in a world where some of the most profound poverty that surrounds us is defined by food deserts, places that are full of things to eat but empty of nourishment. We are living in a time where we've learned to expect digital miracles every day. But all they seem to do is really allow us to become more immediate consumers. So in response to an economic system that begs us to never be anything other than overfull, emptying ourselves is a way to affirm our values and live out our principles. Emptiness can be an extraordinary experience. When we're empty, we're actually able to access a version of ourselves that is uncluttered and authentic. There's a religious term for this emptiness. The word is kenosis. To be empty allows us to experience our lives in this way that reminds us how much we depend on other people, how much we depend on the world. It teaches us about how vulnerable we are and how gracious we should then be among those who need things from us. It only requires that we tip ourselves all the way out until every last drop has emptied. If we confront our empty selves, we may find that we actually had inner resources we didn't know we had. We find that actually maybe our well hasn't run dry. It just requires we dig a little bit deeper, where there's more water than we would have ever guessed. So emptiness, we may learn, is actually a different way of being filled. Or maybe of being filled by elements that we didn't know we had access to. As our anger gives way to patience, our frustration to grace and understanding. And it turns out we always had more to give. Each week we gather to drop stones into a vessel, stones that signify our joys and our concerns. And each week water is the medium that catches them. This water is symbolic of the community, of us, of all of us. But it's also symbolic of the comfort and celebration that's offered to each of us from all of us. Somehow this bowl is empty and full at the same time. When we begin our joys and concerns, it is full of water, but empty of stones. In its emptiness, it invites us to empty ourselves. In its fullness, it invites each of us to fill ourselves with the concerns of others. And thus, as a gathering, form a people who become a congregation, who embody beloved community.
The benefits of that intentional emptying, a spiritual fast, aren't necessarily that different from a physical fast. When we fast physically, we might say that we're trying to improve our digestion and maybe rid the body of toxins. And if we are intentional about a spiritual fast, what we might empty ourselves of, what we might deny ourselves, if you prefer that language, what we might fast from, are those things that are toxic in our own lives. Those distractions that keep us from living out our values, those numbing behaviors that we do to stop worrying about the things that we need to address in our lives. When we fast physically and take a break, maybe we would say it allows our body time to rest and heal. So abstaining from social media might give our hyperactive, reactive minds a chance to rest and heal. When you allow for this break in your normal routine, your soul has a chance to be cleansed, your psyche, your spirit, whatever you name that. There's an inner cleansing that can happen. And a spiritual fast can remind us of the connections between what we do with our time and what we value most deeply. Maybe you've been carrying around some things in your life that have distracted you or burdened you, kept you from living into your values in a meaningful way, kept you from being a best possible version of yourself. Maybe this is the kind of place where you can leave those kinds of burdens, those habits or behaviors that don't really serve you. I know a lot of times we put stones in the water to represent the concerns we have for other people. Maybe today, during a time when we place stones in the water, that stone for you can represent something you're willing to leave here today. Just being able to identify that burden that you don't need to carry around can be really helpful. For me, if I'm able to name it and say, this is something that has been distracting me from who I really want to be, and can let go of that and name it, when I get ready to pick it up again tomorrow, I'll recognize it more easily. And maybe I'll be willing to set it down again, because I know I'm going to pick it up again, and I know I'm the only person that has that pattern of behavior. But for you, perhaps, a moment of reflection before we come forward to place a stone in the water today will give you a chance to recognize what needs to be cleansed for you, what you're ready to let go of so that you can live into your values in a more meaningful, purposeful way. We'll take a moment for reflection, and then as Karen begins with some meditative music, I invite you to come forward and place a stone in the water about any concerns that you may have or anything that you wish to celebrate. And there are a few things that I'll read from the book for the community as well. Place a stone with healing thoughts to David's brother and friend Don, who's recovering in the hospital today. Place a stone for Ernie Anderson as he lost his beloved sister Susan. Know that some of those stones were also joys that we are celebrating. And we are placing this stone today for another joy that the UUCC apple orchard lasagna mulch is complete. 20 impact students and 20 UUCC adults finished spreading cardboard and compost and mulch around our young apple trees, and by next spring the mixture should turn into soil, ready for the planting of perennials that will attract beneficial insects. And you did that, even if you weren't involved, because the project was largely funded by a $600 offering from a Sunday morning collection. So that's something that we did together. Place another stone for all of the other ways that we support and uphold one another. It's an interesting thing when we decide that we are going to let go of some concern about whether our needs or wants are going to be met the way that we want them to be met. When we decide to empty ourselves a little bit of the things that do not serve us well, we might open up a greater sense of awareness for the world around us as well. Being able to see opportunities to reach out to other people, other groups. Recognizing our sense of connection with that interconnected web of existence we're always talking about. Because there are people to whom we are inextricably connected who are also suffering, not by choice. There are people in our communities who experience food insecurity beyond just when can we have breakfast together and when can we have a potluck, daily food insecurity in our neighborhoods. And we are connected to them. Even when those threads seem almost imperceptible. There are people in our communities who are experiencing some other lack. Some area in their lives in which their basic needs are not being fulfilled. So spiritual fasting allows our internal focus to shift a little bit so that we are less concerned about things being just the way we want them to be in our own lives, and we might be able to shift that focus to where do our values call us in the larger reality? What are we called to do in the world? What are we called, how are we called to act on our values in a meaningful way? Our perspective can shift. And in a moment, we're going to hear about this morning's shared offering partner. But before we do that, I invite you to just take another moment of reflection and think, consider, how are you stirred toward acting with greater integrity in your connection with your higher power, your deepest values, your personal purpose? How are you stirred toward greater awareness of your connection with the people around you?
The plate collection for today is for the Seeds of Literacy. It's estimated that 66% of Cleveland adults are functionally illiterate. Seeds of Literacy is a nonprofit organization that provides free basic education and GED and HSE preparation for approximately 1,000 adults in the Cleveland area each year. Its students, volunteers, and donors all work to bring a root cause of poverty, illiteracy. There are 2 locations on West 25th and on Kinsman, and tutoring is available virtually for students outside Northeast Ohio. Here is what some students of Seeds of Literacy have said. This is the nicest organization I've been a part of. They're friendly, organized, and they care about you. They take the time to make sure that whoever you are, what age range, whatever, they can help. I just wish I had known before about this organization to help me get my GED. And from another, I've had so many experiences with GED places. Here, they will sit and help you understand. They made me feel comfortable. They said, don't be scared to ask for help. If you can't figure something out, they come back to you. They're not judging. They don't make you feel like you don't know what you're doing. No matter how long it helps, they'll be here to help. Please donate as you can to Seeds of Literacy as the plate is passed, with the Cash App option, or as a final resource, put a check in the mail to the church, marking plate in today's date in the memo line. And you might even consider volunteering as a tutor.
I invite you to read along on that bright yellow cardstock we mentioned earlier as we accept these gifts this morning together. We offer these gifts of gratitude, and we acknowledge the constant gifts of time, talent, and treasure that strengthen and nourish this congregation as a reflection of our commitment to community within and without, our purposeful spirituality that is ever searching and growing, and our intentional actions that lead to greater justice. Our city, our nation, and our world. A spiritual fast decision to abstain from some aspect of our modern diet. Our literal diet of food or our figurative diet of activities that distract us from those things that are lasting and meaningful. The benefit of a dietary fast is that it can help rid your body of toxins. A spiritual fast can help us loosen our sense of attachment to some toxic behaviors and patterns too. But just avoiding toxins isn't the point. It's about what we choose to focus on instead. So we might say that fasting is one tool that we might use to build integrity between our beliefs and our actions. Now, you may not be interested in fasting at all. It's not a Unitarian Universalist thing, and there are lots of other tools in our toolbox that can help us live with integrity to our values. But we are in a time of unintentional fasting. And so as we engage in this time of learning how to connect with one another in different ways, learning how to still be community, even if we have to change some of the ways that we choose to be in community. May we be mindful of the opportunities before us to release those things that hinder us from connecting, and to find meaningful ways to be with one another. So, the way we are going to do that this morning is we are going to bless the bread that you all have brought. We are going to welcome some new members into our midst. We're going to have a time of socializing afterwards if you choose to remain here. And then as you leave today, you'll be able to take some bread with you. It'll be at the east and west entrances as you head to the parking lot. Baskets of bread lovingly prepared for you, just for you today. And so I invite you to turn to the insert in your order of service, the actual insert that has words for blessing the bread. And we'll read those together. There's more bread than this. The ushers are holding this bread as symbolic bread. But if you want to think of it as a miracle when you depart today, let's bless this bread together. We bless this bread with our gratitude for the loving hands that prepared it, for its delightful flavor that will satisfy our hunger and sustain our bodies. We bless this bread with our gratitude for the unconditional hospitality it represents, for its reminder to offer with open hearts, for its reminder to receive with open hearts. We bless this bread with our gratitude for the community that provides nourishment, for the loving people who surround us, for the ways that we are welcomed, even when we hunger especially when we hunger. May we nourish one another mindfully. May we be nourished by one another vulnerably. May we ever dwell in a spirit of gratitude.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This morning I'd like to have you join me in welcoming our new members. And as I call the new member's name, please come forward. That'll be better. Okay, Suzanne Zilber, Barbara Hill Newby, Bill Newby, Dana Borgland, Linda Coulter, Susan Harlow, Margaret Nash. So, I think you're next.
We have a reading this morning. We have a reading this morning by Mila Jones called "What is this church?" It is not the building except to the extent that we have chosen it as our gathering place. It's not the minister except to the extent that we have called him to inspire and guide our spiritual lives. It is not the music except to the extent that we make it when we blend our voices together to produce sounds lovelier than any one of us could make alone. It is not even the beliefs, for we Unitarian Universalists have no single unified belief, only the combined beliefs of each one of us. This church is the people. Without our committed members, this church would not exist. We are this church. Without us, it is nothing more than a dream. But with us, it can be anything we wish it to be.
I invite you to take that same insert that we blessed the bread with and turn it over, and you'll see our new member covenant, lovingly adapted by Allison Bashkin. Thank you, Allison. Wherever you are. We welcome you, our new members, into the UUCC community. We are so glad that you are here and have chosen this community of fellow seekers to travel with you on your life journeys. Will you accept with us as we seek to create a community and a world dedicated to love and justice? If so, respond, we will.
We will.
Congregation, will you welcome these new members with the warmth and comfort of your fellowship and seek to add your strengths and talents to the new gifts they bring to us? If so, respond, we will.
We will.
Let us commit ourselves to this community with the following words that bind us together in common purpose and common love in the midst of our beautiful diversity of belief. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. We have a couple of things to give you, and then I invite you to mindfully and respectfully greet one another. Make sure you take note of the dots on people's name tags before you reach out to give someone a comforting touch. And make sure your masks are up where they belong and all nice and secure. And we'll welcome our new members as we greet them.
Yeah, I used to have a phone. Phone.
All right, we're going to sing our closing hymn. So there are two of them. And because the words are going to be different for the second song than what would be in your hymnal, please do look at the words in the order of service. We're going to start with number 68, Come Ye Thankful People. And again, those words are different. And then we're going to do two verses of We Sing Now Together, verses 1 and 4. So just the words that are in your order of service. So rise to, or stay risen as able, and join me.
Shall joy
We sing about you as we bow in the making, in every voice that praise you have won. In those humble races, all times and grades and places, we pledge ourselves in covenant, firmly to stand.
Since you have your orders of service open to that back page, I want to call your attention once again to the QR code down in the bottom corner. If you use that QR code, just take a picture of it with your device and hopefully it'll get you to the website. Or there's a bit.ly link you can use down there if the QR code doesn't work on your device. That's how we know that you were here today. Just in case we need to do any contact tracing, we can let folks who are here today know if there's an issue. We only have one, and folks have been using this a little less frequently over the last couple of weeks. So I want to remind you that it's there, and it's important to keep doing it. It's not just a one-time thing. Do it every time you're here. Also, we are continuing with our, I guess you can sit down. We are continuing with our social hour experiment today. So when the service ends, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here in the sanctuary. There's not a lot of maneuvering room, and it's easy to get clumped up in little clusters that don't abide by our safe distancing kind of practices that we want to do. So, if you want to catch up with friends inside the building after the service, there are going to be tickets both in the narthex and as you leave this door here. There are colored tickets in baskets that you'll be able to take, and the tickets correspond to rooms where we'll still be able to gather together and maintain social distance. Each room can only accommodate a set number of people, so there's a limited number. Oh, there I am. I don't know what's going on with the mic today. Each room can only accommodate a set number of people, so that means there's a limited number of tickets, and that means every member of your pod needs an individual ticket. And so if there's somebody that needs to be supervised, make sure they get the same color ticket as somebody that's going to be supervising them. Other instructions. So when Karin's post-loop concludes, you can take one of the color tickets and join up with others in the room matching your ticket, or you can leave the building to socialize outside if you want to be out in the crisp weather, or you can just go on with the rest of your day. Either way, baskets of bread will be at both the east and west exits for the parking lot so that you can take home a delicious symbol of the abundant love and hospitality that we offer one another here as you leave the building today. So today, blue tickets are going to correspond to the fellowship hall. If you want to gather in the fellowship hall, take a blue ticket and head downstairs. Yellow tickets will head to room 106 and 108. That divider has been opened up on the first floor downstairs, so there's a large space there where people can gather, room 106 and 108. And Vermilion tickets, I don't know where you got those Vermilion tickets. Those are not official tickets. Do not try to pull that. Blue, fellowship hall, yellow, rooms 106 and 108. Those are our two rooms for social hours today. Whatever you choose, please remember to remain masked and socially distanced and respect the colored dots on name tags. And as a reminder, let's read our COVID covenant together. That's on the bright yellow cardstock that we use every week now. In beloved community, we welcome everyone, absolutely everyone, into this space of worship and fellowship. In this time of pandemic, we covenant to respect one another by considering the safety and comfort of others before ourselves, to respect the policies our leadership has established, and to take all of our steps with one another with grace and understanding as we work to make this a truly safe place for all people. Hear the words of Reverend Deborah Hoffner. We are on a journey. We didn't plan it. We didn't have time for the bread to rise. We may find ourselves in the wilderness, hungry, thirsty, doubting that we should ever have come. But look around. Go ahead, look around. We are not alone. It is our journey together. A journey to our better selves, a journey to a better world, a journey to a more promised land. Amen, and blessed be. We'll extinguish our chalice together. Oh, and I'm reading this one today. Okay, yellow insert again. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Good morning. My name is Kevin. Yes. I wanted to say thank you for doing this. It makes me feel connected when I'm down the floor. So thank you so much.
I'm so glad.
I may not always dial in and tune in, but it really is meaningful to me when I can.
Oh, awesome. I'm so
Thank
glad.
you. It does reach people.
Oh, good. don't think we've had a chance to meet. I'm Meg Hawkins. Hi, Meg. It's nice to meet you. We appreciate you. Of course. Well,